Now, on the 20th century, gang violence in America.
I was shot when I was 15 or 16. My lungs collapsed. The .22 is still lodged in my chest to this day.
Temba Kelly was shot because he belonged to the wrong street gang. Call them the Bloods or the Crips, the Vice Lords or the Latin Kings. By the 1990s, gangs had become a troubling phenomenon in hundreds of American cities and towns.
What's going on where people can feel they can go and stop on the street and shoot somebody and shoot them 20, 23 times? I mean, what's going on?
And despite the rising death toll, gangs only grew more powerful in the closing years of the 20th century. I'm Mike Wallace, and this is the 20th century. Gangs have been a part of America for years, but with the proliferation of handguns during the last 2 decades of the 20th century, gang members suddenly started killing each other in record numbers.
I walked through hell. I was there. I was in the gangs.
Temba Hassan Kelly was one of Chicago's high supreme gangsters for almost 10 years.
I thought I was a gangster. I wanted to be hard. I didn't know who I was at that time. I was reaching out for identity.
Kelly was one of thousands of young people who flocked to gangs in frightening numbers in the late 20th century.
There are gangs all over the country now in a way there never have been before.
Sociologist Malcolm Klein has been studying street gangs since 1962.
And in the early 80s, it started to explode, and after about 1985, it just went crazy.
It's been a brutal week on the streets of Hartford, Connecticut. At least 5 gang-related shootings, 1 gang-related homicide. This car was found with 9 bullet holes. This teenager, who didn't want to be identified, says she's scared.
I can just go outside, and if I wear the wrong colors, I'm shot and dead.
What's all that gunpowder smell?
Oh, no,
that's from down there. That's from down there, huh? So he was doing some shooting. Where'd they shoot you, partner? Where'd they shoot you in the crotch?
No.
Who shot you?
I don't know who shot me.
Was it gangbangers?
Had to be.
That's the second time.
In California, they're now saying that auto accident deaths are becoming second to gun killings. And gun killings are a feature of gang activity.
In fact, in Los Angeles, home to the notorious Crips and Bloods, almost half of all homicides are gang-related.
More than a dozen dead every week. Neighborhood battles about drugs, turf, loyalty among 100,000 Crips and Bloods.
To the outside, untrained eye, it looks like just chaos, crazy. But to us, we know how we got to this point. The death of a brother is enough to motivate to kill.
Bone is a Blood, a general in the war. Many with his status are jailed or dead. The graffiti tracks the vicious cycle of murder and retaliation.
And Babyface he was shot with a AK in the car.
And the violence is spreading to more neighborhoods. The number of gang-related killings in Los Angeles is expected to break a record for the 5th straight year. Some say the average life expectancy for any gang member is just 19.
But 19 was considered almost old by gang standards.
More and more often, the suspects and victims of crime are children. Nowhere is that more evident than in Chicago, where in the past 2 weeks, at least 3 young lives were lost to the violence of the streets.
Stop the killing! Stop the killing! Save our children!
Carrying a tiny coffin, marchers in South Chicago mourn the children, those killed, and those increasingly younger who are doing the killing.
We want to show our support for, our younger children that's dying on the streets and everything, and these gangs and all of this insanity. It has to come to a halt.
But stopping gangs wasn't simple.
There have probably always been gangs in the sense that there have been crime-oriented youth groups, kids on the streets getting into trouble, whether it's in Athens or Berlin or in New York, really doesn't matter in that sense. But our understanding of them really starts in the 1930s in this country, in the United States.
20th century American gangs grew out of the new wave of immigrants who arrived in the United States early in the century.
They were the sons of immigrants, or they were themselves immigrants who came to this country and had troubles making it.
Youth gangs were overshadowed by organized crime in the 30s. Gangsters like Al Capone came to epitomize gangs in America. But street gangs found their own different identity after World War II.
The typical street gang was fairly uncohesive. They were low cohesive rather than tightly gathered. Their leadership turned over a great deal.
And unlike organized crime, these new gangsters didn't focus on one or two illegal activities.
They had what we call cafeteria-style crime. They were very versatile. They were into everything. A little vandalism, a little fighting, a little theft, a little this, a little that, so that when you looked at rap sheets of gang members, you saw a wide variety. They were not specialists. They were generalists in their crime pattern.
But they did capture Hollywood's attention. Movies and plays like West Side Story romanticized gang life in the 50s.
It was Hollywood's version of gangs. The West Side Story image, for instance, of the cohesive, beautifully led, coordinated, romantic, dancing, singing group never existed. It was a marvelous play and a marvelous musical, but it was not a real gang.
Hollywood also romanticized a new West Coast phenomenon known as motorcycle gangs. The 1954 movie, The Wild One, with Marlon Brando, helped glamorize a band of real-life rebel bikers, the Hells Angels. The Angels were founded in 1948 by former World War II pilots and navigators and gunners. The gang's name was believed to come from the nickname of an airplane called Hells Angels, whose crew wanted only to drink and raise hell.
The Angels are proud of their standing as the oldest outlaw group. They say they go back nearly 20 years. They are not teenagers, most in their late 20s and 30s. They depend greatly on each other. Few have jobs. Many of the men live off the relief checks of their girlfriends. Most have criminal records. Repeated arrest, that is.
We have identified over 446 of these people with criminal records. And 250 of these are for felony arrests. About 151 of them, I believe, have felony convictions. A number of them, about 85, have been sent to state prisons, and some of them have been sent to our state mental institutions.
We don't want the public to be with us. We don't want the law to be with us. Is all we want is to be left alone. We want to go down the highway. Don't bother nobody but ourselves. To be left alone.
Donna, how did you happen to get attracted to the kind of fellows that are in the Angel?
Well, I don't know, maybe I like the dirty Levi's.
Why do you admire the Angels?
Well, I don't know, I idolize them. I adore them. They're my whole life.
Their romantic image aside, the Hells Angels were as violent as any street gang.
I got a code of honor this way. The girl is with me. She's with me all the way. I mean, if anybody tries to mess with that girl while she's with me, I'll kill him. I'll cut that throat.
They were tough folks. They are tough folks. They're mobile, they're older, they're much better organized, much more devoted to certain kinds of criminal activity than the usual street gang.
If cocaine was the drug of the 80s, methamphetamine looms as the drug of the 90s. That, according to federal drug officials and the National Institute of Drug Abuse. Who are its principal distributors? The Hells Angels, the oldest and largest motorcycle club in the United States.
There is no other organized criminal group that has as much of an influence in methamphetamine manufacturing and trafficking as the Hells Angels, from what we know in law enforcement.
And the reason for that is?
The reason for that is, based on the number of investigations we've conducted involving methamphetamine trafficking, the group that shows up time and time again, particularly in the western United States, is the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club.
Cisco Valderrama is president of the Hells Angels' largest chapter in Oakland, California.
The Hells Angels do not manufacture and distribute methamphetamine. I know a lot of, or some, I shouldn't say a lot, some members have gotten arrested for it. But you're talking about the Hells Angels. No, the Hells Angels do not.
Despite those denials, the federal government came down hard on the Hells Angels for their reputed role in drug trafficking.
Operation Rough Rider came to a showdown today as hundreds of heavily armed FBI agents and police arrested more than 130 members and associates of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. A 2-year investigation led to federal charges of racketeering and trafficking in cocaine, methamphetamine, and other drugs. The government says the gang ran a network that ranged across 13 states coast to coast.
The arrest slowed the Hells Angels down, but it didn't stop them. But the Angels were quickly overshadowed in the 1990s by the explosive growth and violence of street gangs that began to spring up all over America. That story when the 20th century continues. To understand how big the street gang problem became, consider this. In 1980, less than 175 cities had active gangs in their midst. By 1990, the number had jumped to 800. And by 1996, more than 1,100 communities across America had to deal with gang-related crimes of one kind or another. Thousands of youngsters joined gangs because, for many, it was the only organized group in the neighborhood, or the hood, as the gangs called it.
That's what everybody else in the hood was doing, wanting to be a gangster.
For Temba Hassan Kelly, it was hard not to be in a gang.
Everybody, I mean, it's like 75 to 90% of the children that I knew were either gangsters, were striving to want to be gangsters.
If I see gangs proliferating, then it tells me something's going really bad about our society, about the inner city parts of our society.
In the late 20th century, the nation's decaying inner cities became fertile breeding grounds for gangs.
The unemployment rate is increasingly high. The federal and state governments are putting less and less into our inner city, inner town communities.
Take Hartford, Connecticut. Known traditionally as the capital of the insurance industry, Hartford became a gang stronghold.
Now other agents flourish in Hartford, gang members whose policies are drugs and death. There was less danger in this city and others like it, even 3 years ago. But many who could have fled by now, seeking safety in the suburbs, leaving behind the poor and the projects and the often violent ends for lives from the street.
We have since 1980 seen a profusion of more and more primarily minority populations in cities, small cities and large, where successful minorities have moved out into the suburbs, leaving behind a vacuum.
But gangs weren't growing just in old East Coast cities like Hartford. They were springing up everywhere.
Across the country, in smaller communities from Portland, Maine to Eugene, Oregon to Des Moines, Iowa, police are facing a gang problem. Rapid City, South Dakota, population 55,000.
We got to the point where we would have quite a little gang violence.
Officer Louis Lang is with the city's new gang task force.
There was some of the lynch mob.
That's the name of the gang, the lynch mob?
Yeah.
It's a friendly name.
These are marks that were burned into your arm with a knife.
Yeah. Ask him about that.
And that's how you were initiated into the gang?
Yep.
Frank is 15 years old and says he's a member of Rapid City's biggest gang, the Boys.
This whole block's my turf.
This is your turf?
Yeah, anybody walks in there I don't like that says anything, I just run over there and knock them out.
And the enemy is just across the street.
Right over there in the red house, bunch of punks.
The lynch mob.
Sunnyside, Washington. Population, 11,000 people. Many of them farm workers. By day, Sunnyside is as peaceful as its name. But when the sun goes down...
What's 04 have, Sunnyside?
Attempted entry.
Youth gangs roam the streets.
At least 100 other towns the size of Sunnyside were reporting gang activity.
What's your date of birth, dude? Hey guys, you need to move on. We had the dubious honor of having the highest juvenile arrest rate in the state, and almost the majority of our time was dealt with juveniles. Here they are.
The kids are unsupervised, many of them, and in the adolescent years you're looking for peer associations. The gang provides that.
Gangs became so popular among the young that they never had to worry about new recruits.
You know, with me, the symbolism was what attracted me to it. That was the first and foremost thing. The second thing was being a rebellious youth. Next thing was acceptance and a belonging.
Juan Arteaga joined his first gang in the mecca of teenage gangsters, Compton, California.
Now in Washington State, the 14-year-old considered himself a veteran.
Why do kids join gangs at this school?
Because they think that's their family right now. If they don't have both parents together, then that's what the gang tries to show them, is the love and affection that they don't have in their house.
What'd your mother do?
Well, she's in prison right now.
Your mother's in prison. What'd she do?
Well, she was selling drugs.
13-year-old Danny Lopez is a schoolmate of Juan Arteaga and a prime target for gang recruitment.
Are you lonely?
Yeah. Sometimes there's anger inside me. It's hard.
What do they say to you when you say, I don't want to join?
They're just like, you join and we'll be your family and all this stuff. We'll be your best friends. You got problems, we'll solve them for you.
The gang gave me love, or at least love that I didn't feel that I was getting at home. Power, a feeling of acceptance, authority.
They get identity, they get belongingness, a sense of something to belong to. They get status as gang members that they can't have in any other way, or they feel they can't have in any other way.
It's about ego, you know, building our egos, being accepted, being recognized, reaching out for something, you know, not really having too many options to reach out to in the neighborhood.
These gangsters were usually boys and men, ranging in age from 11 to 30. 85% were black and Hispanic. About 10% were white.
Society hasn't let them in the same way that it has some of the rest of us.
So when I'm locked out of America, I'm locked out of churches, schools, and home, I go to my homeboys because these are the only people that will take me in. I find love with my homeboys. I even find discipline with my homeboys because when I'm hungry, one of my homeboys will feed me. And when I die, I know my homeboys will take a collection and bury me.
The system doesn't work for us. When one of our people dies, police don't give a damn, you know. They make the report, scoop the body up, and he's gone to the morgue. They like, yeah, one less nigga off the street.
While the majority of gangs were black and Hispanic, there were as many different gangs as different races or ethnic groups in any city or town.
We're Irish, you know, Irish, so we wanted an Irish gang, so we could stick up for each other like brothers.
They are known as the Irish Mob, recognizable by their green beads, goatees, short hair, and shared heritage.
It's my ethnicity, I mean, just my culture and my heritage.
We have Vietnamese gangs, Cambodian gangs, Laotian gangs.
Man, still crippin' though.
The black gangs.
Still crippin' though.
The Bloods and the Crips. And we have Hispanic gangs. We have skinheads.
The way of the future.
Both racist skinheads and anti-racist skinheads.
Officer Lauren Christensen is part of a special police unit that tracks Portland's booming gang business.
We're dipping water out of the ocean with a glass. And what's going to make it get better, I don't know.
You ever shoot anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Increasingly, young women began joining gangs.
Well, you know, I grew up in South Central LA. You know, I grew up a gang member. I mean, you expect me to play patty cake or what?
So when you shot, did you hit anybody?
I'm pretty sure I did, yeah, of course.
You ever think about it? You worry about it?
No. Because I look at it like this. It was him or me, and I'm here to tell the story.
Kim Watson's story is a litany of alarming numbers.
5 deuce.
5.2?
My neighborhood.
A gang member since age 12. A dozen arrests. And now, at age 24, she has 4 children.
Wheeler Jr. He's my firstborn.
And a 10-year sentence in prison. As many as 1 in 3 gang members were females, and sometimes they were just as frightening as their male counterparts.
If you needed a gun, you can get one.
Yeah.
You shot someone?
That's what they said. Several times, that's what they said.
Were they right?
I don't know. Bullets don't have names.
Sylvia Nunn earned her gang member's stripes by committing crimes.
Do you think it's right or wrong to get involved in stick-ups, to rob people, drive-bys?
I think it's wrong, but then it's called survival. You have to eat. You have to pay bills. You have to survive. So when you used to get used to pulling a trigger on somebody, it's not hard to pick up a gun and just shoot, you know? It's not hard after a while. It becomes easy, common, and depending on the people that you're shooting at and the reason for you doing it, it might even be fun. When I got a gun on you, anything I tell you to do, you're gonna do it. Anything, you're gonna do it. It's like, I'm running everything. I'm running this show. Shut up, sit down. Shut up, turn around. You know, it's just, it's fun in a way, and it's funny.
That's funny, Kim? Come on.
Yeah, because I've actually had guys piss on themselves. It's fun. It's just, I don't know, you know, it's a rush. It's the excitement of just being in charge, and then you're scared because, God, what if the cops come? And it's like you're gambling with, you know, it's just, it's fun. It's exciting. It's exciting.
And once in a gang, members didn't tend to leave as they grew older.
The upper age range has extended, in traditional gangs in particular, has extended into the 20s, the 30s. There are even examples of 40-year-olds, probably because the employment situation doesn't give them something else to do.
But also because the gang attachment, like a habit, was not easily broken.
So you already lost your brother to a gang, and you're in a gang. You've been shot at. But so why not get out? It's just not a choice. Why not get out?
I don't want to.
You don't want to?
No.
Why not?
Come on. Just don't want to get out.
You like it?
Yeah.
That, despite the fact that gang life was, if nothing else, lethal.
Pipe Santana. All that's left of this 24-year-old is his name. Graffiti on a wall. There was a gang standoff on this corner in downtown Hartford. Pipe was trying to walk away when he was shot in the back.
He was shot dead by someone from the rival gang, the Latin Kings. 300 members of Los Solitos marched at his funeral. The gang buried Pipe and then swore revenge. A gang war followed with nearly 300 shootings and more than 24 murders.
With the mortality rate so high among gang members, the question was, why did so many young people keep joining them? The powerful attraction of life inside a gang when we return. To the adult world, the casual violence of gang life was horrifying. But in the distorted world of gangs, risking death by getting shot was one sure way of winning a gang's respect.
I was shot when I was 15 or 16.
Shots fired in the area, gang fight, the parking lot.
Well, my lungs collapsed. The 22 is still lodged in my chest to this day.
Have a man shot, 1017.
See, getting shot and living was more for my ego. That was more for my image. Now I could walk around like Superman. I've been shot. I'm great. I am now. In my chest at that.
They show off their scars the way war veterans display Purple Hearts.
Yeah, I got shot in the heart, and these are other scars that I've had from other neighborhood fightings and a lot of stuff that I've been through.
Most victims of gang killings are other gang members, in the neighborhood of 60 or 70% probably, because the killings are rivalry related. They're attacks back and forth between gangs.
And then all I know, next thing I know, I felt it, the bullet go in me.
Gang murder is growing into a national problem, but in Los Angeles, it is an epidemic.
Who'd you get shot with?
22.
Last year, there were 554 gang killings.
Just the other night, they had one of their guys shot right down here on McMillan.
Sergeant Joe Holmes works the gang detail at the LA County Sheriff's Department.
Where'd they shoot you?
Outnumbered and outgunned,
You have any guns? No. You're just out driving when you ain't supposed to be driving?
the gang unit can target only a fraction of the 80,000 black and Hispanic gang members in LA County.
He got shot first, I believe, with an AK-47.
Almost always, gang violence involved turf. That is, one gang trespassing on another's territory.
Most gangs are territorial. They feel safe in their own turf, their barrio, their hood, whatever they call it, and yet being there is the very thing that brings challenges from the outside. So in claiming a territory, they open themselves up to attack.
Territory areas, that's what a lot of people, get hurt over.
But trespassing wasn't the only slight that could lead to all-out war.
Where I lived, stepping on someone's shoe was a capital offense, punishable by death.
Cody Scott, a notorious member of LA's Crips gang, wrote a memoir of gang life while he was serving time in prison.
Escort coming in.
He spends 22.5 hours a day in solitary confinement, where he wrote his autobiography with a prison-issue pencil.
This book is 383 pages of killings, stabbings, beatings, drive-by shootings, revenge killings. At one point, you amputate the arms of a rival gang member. Explain that to me.
This book is 383 pages of reality. It's 383 pages of gore, no doubt about that, but it's reality. It happens every day. The underlying factor that usually got you killed was the principle. The principle is respect, a linchpin critical to relations between all people, but magnified by 30 in the ghettos and slums across America.
To win respect.
To win respect.
Why respect?
Because there's no objective respect coming from quote-unquote society. So when you don't feel respect, you create what is respect to you.
The problem was that gang members created respect most often with guns.
It's a war actually for nothing other than the destruction of human beings. The end result is to create funerals. As many soldiers as you can drop on the other side is considered success.
Why are these teenagers killing each other? Some are looking to make a reputation. Some of them pick up a gun to do it.
Got one here on the leg, one in the mouth.
Rebel was a shooter for the East LA Dukes.
I wanted respect. I didn't want anybody to mess with my neighborhood. And that's what it was all about for me.
And so violence made you a bigger man.
Yeah. Violence intimidates and brings fear into people's hearts. And that's just what it's about. One neighborhood has to overcome another by fear. Violence will do it.
What made gang life so much more lethal, though, was the variety of weapons that suddenly became available to gangs.
This was the gun of choice for the gangbangers and for the punks, the Saturday Night Special. Currently, the gun of choice seems to be a 9mm. It's a 9mm with a large capacity magazine. It'll hold 32 cartridges.
Meet the Vice Lords.
We got 50-shot max, this small. We got techs. We got 30-30s. We got Uzis.
Just one of the many heavily armed street gangs in Chicago.
Hey, we hunt whoever try to hunt us. That's how it is. The gang survivors. Right.
You hunting people.
Right. Anybody who try to come through our building.
If one of us go down, they going down too.
If one of us go down, everybody got to go.
Chicago had one of the strictest gun laws in the country, but that didn't begin to slow up the gangs.
It's easy to get a gun anytime you want. My whole family own a gun except for me, but I can get a gun anytime I want.
You got a gun now? Well, show it to us. Can you? Okay, now what is that?
It's a 25 automatic.
25 automatic?
Yeah.
Would you ever use it?
Yeah.
You would use it?
Yes, I would.
In the last 10 years, the number of homicides committed by people under 21 has increased 50%.
On the street and shoot somebody and shoot them 20, 23 times. I mean, what's going on?
He's talking about 14-year-old Isaac Jackson, gunned down this week in a fatal spray of drive-by bullets on a city block where parents won't allow their children near a window.
Monday night, I couldn't go to sleep. They kept shooting all night.
When I first moved over here, I didn't have to worry about this. Now I got to watch my back and everything. I hate it.
This solemn ritual is painfully familiar to Lorna Hawkins, the lonely journey to bury a son. 21-year-old Joe was killed in a drive-by shooting 4 years ago. Today, Hawkins said goodbye to her last son, Gerald, age 20, another innocent victim of gang violence.
It hurts so bad. Nobody really knows except mothers who's lost their kids. I've known and I've talked to more mothers than I care to who have lost 2 and 3 kids. So I'm not alone.
Although shootouts with rival gangs were the focus of many street gangs, they were hardly non-stop. Most gangsters spent their time just hanging out in their territory.
Gangs don't do much. Gang members wander around and wonder what to do. They don't have a lot of things typically to occupy their time. You'll see them out on the street looking for something, looking for action, looking for somebody to talk to, wondering what's going on, saying, hey man, what's happening? At night, very often they'll be around drinking and talking and sharing war stories and not being productive in any real sense, but maintaining their identity with each other and reinforcing each other.
A weekend night in the projects. Family time for Los Solitos. They accept each other. They share tattoos, wear the colors, red and blue, and the special Los Solitos metal link belts.
Gangs cemented that sense of belonging through an elaborate set of rituals, secret signs and symbols known only to fellow gang members.
Actually, before I joined the gang, I used to go home and draw the symbols, you know, on my own little pieces of paper and stuff like that.
Because identity is very important to gang members, they develop symbols for themselves, and those may be tattoos. They may use hand signals.
Hands, this symbolizes where we're from. This is what we're all about. You know what I'm saying? This symbolizes our love for one another. This is it right here.
They may wear special colors, blue or red, or some other colors now developing. The blue color goes with Crips. The red color goes with Bloods. If you see a red bandana, you're probably looking at a Blood.
The colors for the High Supreme Gangster Nation were black and blue. The stacking of the two fists was a symbol of the Black Gangster Disciple Nation or High Supreme Gangsters. This was just like a physical affirmation that you remember the gang, you know. You just do this. You were stacking them.
One of the gang's most important symbols was the tattoo.
I was branded, you know, like a cow. You know, I was branded by this brother by the name of Junebug. And the symbolism that he branded me with was a 6-pointed star, also a devil's tail, wings, like the angel's wings. In the Bible, they're like symbolic for strength. And the heart speaks for itself. The heart was like you would go all out. And the name of the gang was, which is right here, which is expressed, SG, Supreme Gangsters.
But before the tattoos and the signs and the symbols, most new gang members had to go through a brutal rite of passage, initiation.
This steady stream of abuse is called a jumping in. It's the initiation into a Filipino gang in San Diego.
The more you get beat, that's the better, because it's like, respect. Yeah.
It's what gang members see as a joyful rite of passage.
It's just love. I was giving them love. Like when your parents say, I beat you because I love you, that's what it was.
Yeah, I'll be the first one to pick them up. You might have a broken leg, a busted head. That's my boy, you know.
The usual process is some kind of fighting. It may be one-on-one, it may be 5-on-1. The purpose being to show how brave you are, that you have heart, that you have courage. That's one reason to ask to be initiated, to be jumped in, which is the phrase.
But initiations weren't only about getting beat up.
It may involve some kind of criminal activity. It may involve going along on certain exploits with gang members in order to show that you've got the stuff.
But because violence was so much a part of gang life, initiations sometimes ended tragically.
For 4 days, Chicago police searched for 11-year-old Robert Sandifer. Last night, just after midnight, they found him under a Southside viaduct, shot twice in the head. Police say last Sunday the sixth grader was firing on rival gang members as part of an initiation rite when he killed 14-year-old Siobhan Dean, an innocent bystander, and wounded 2 others. With the intense police search, Robert may have become a liability to the very gangs that armed him.
Here's a perfect example of someone who apparently, was doing the bidding of people in gangs and finds himself then, because he is expendable, apparently becoming a victim of the gangs himself.
Do you get used to death? Do you get used to living with the fact that you could die any day?
But see, I don't worry about that until you get hit by that bullet. See, that's just like when people steal cars. They don't worry about getting caught until they get caught, right? And that's the same when we're shooting at a person. I don't think about getting caught till I get caught.
There were some gang members, a few, who reached the point where they wanted to get away from the violence, the danger of gang life. But quitting a gang was easier said than done, as we'll see when the 20th century returns. Since a typical gang member saw no future outside the gang, he was often reluctant to give up life inside the gang. Anyone trying to break away from gang life usually needed help, and a lot of it from outsiders.
David is a former gang member trying to make it on the road back. Away from gangs, away from violence. He's been out on parole for a month. A meeting of the California Youth Authority, an agency that supervises and assists parolees.
When you go to an interview, any visible tattoos that will hinder you from getting that position?
Yeah. Would you like to get that removed? Yeah. Okay.
We're going to vaporize your tattoo.
By shedding the brand that marked him a gang member, David is taking a big step towards a new life.
Comfortable, David?
Oh, yeah.
But back in his neighborhood, the question was, how long would he be able to stay away from his old gang?
It's pretty hard. Sometimes you go through a stress mood, and it's very easy to fall back because I've been so used to being in the streets. It's like a lot of times I got the urge, just go back. But I want to have my nephews look up to me. I want to be somebody. I want to show them I could do it. I'm pretty sure I can.
If David managed to stay out of gangs permanently, he'd be lucky. That's because programs to get kids out of gangs had largely disappointing results.
Hands on top of your head, stand next to your friends.
So a lot of cities fell back on law enforcement people, special gang units, to discourage gangs and gang membership.
Home sweet home.
When they're not jogging, Sergeant Nick Titteriga and his elite anti-gang team called Crash chase gang members in the 77th.
And I'll put my Crash unit against any unit in the city of Los Angeles or against anybody in the United States, and we'll whip their ass.
See some hands. Put your hands up. Face the building. Don't move.
Put your legs out, man. There you go.
This guy over here is wanted for street robbery.
Nick Titteriga has taken his tactics from the streets.
Why are you selling marijuana on my streets? I've been around a little bit while. The community's tired of these thugs and gangsters out here taking the streets over. Look straight ahead. Look straight ahead.
The objective was to make life so unpleasant for gang members that they wanted to give up their guns.
The Crash unit,
we're coming out of the alleys, we're jumping out of roofs.
Plays by street rules.
We're coming at them hard, and we're letting them know we ain't tolerating it.
With intimidation.
Well, try to do that one more time. See what happens to you.
And arrests.
You got a lot of money today, man. Nobody's watching.
But police departments with gang units had mixed results.
We've watched a lot of suppression programs in Los Angeles in particular, only to see the gang problem growing worse and worse and worse. The more you give attention to the group, the more it sees itself as special. Inadvertently, you're feeding the very factors that have brought about gangs in the first place.
I forwarded the applications on all the jobs for you guys.
That's why one police sergeant in Hartford, Connecticut, decided to try something different.
Swing it, swing it, swing it!
Police Sergeant Mark Rivera finally got discouraged, so 5 years ago he decided to try another approach. Give youngsters a reason to stay out of the gangs. Today he runs Hartford's Police Athletic League.
Come on, Danny.
What is it you offer young people that the gang can't?
I compete with them. I fight for the hearts and minds of the young people.
Danny is 16.
I know you've been out there smoking some reefer with your friends, and Danny, that I can't tolerate. That's really disrespectful towards me. I'm a policeman and I'm supposed to uphold laws, and then when you come in here high, that's just like throwing in my face that you just don't care.
He knows the boy is spending time with a gang. He worries the gang will win his loyalty and perhaps his life.
You need to be involved in the kid's life. They're not going to remember any rich and famous person who espouses some well-developed philosophy based on brilliant theory. They're going to remember the individual who's there with them every day.
We've seen very few gang control programs or intervention programs that work. The community has to be healthy in order to get rid of gangs, and we have an awful lot of unhealthy communities right now.
That unhealthy image is what Father Greg Boyle, a Jesuit priest, fought in Los Angeles, the only way he knew how, by providing the unconditional love that most of those young people had never felt.
If it wasn't for him, I'd probably been dead by now.
Without Father Greg, you'd be dead, you believe?
A lot of us would have been dead without him.
Really? Why? What does he do that...
He helps us out. He's like a second father to lots of us. We got problems, he's always there for us. He never says no to us. We say, we gotta talk to you, G. Like, all right, I'll be there or come down. But he never says, nah, I can't talk to you right now, I'm busy. He ain't like that.
To stay out of trouble.
To earn gang members' respect, Father Boyle followed the gang code of absolute loyalty. He never turned in a gang member for a crime.
I didn't take my vows to LAPD, you know.
You know that some of these kids, I don't say the kids in this room, but you know that gang members have shot, have killed, have sold drugs. You never tell the cops about it.
No, but I talked to the kids about it. Especially in a case of a murder, which is like obviously very serious. And my hope for a kid in a case like that is that he will turn himself in, take responsibility for what he's done.
But Father Boyle also gave them something they never had before, the prospect for a decent job, a decent life.
William, job. You're not old enough?
Beyond a limited number of city jobs available to these homeboys, Father Greg has found few private employers willing to take a chance hiring them. So he's formed construction crews of homeboys to build a parish daycare center. Another crew does maintenance work around the church. All the salaries are paid out of contributions. And Father Greg prays enough checks will come in the mail every Thursday to make his payroll every Friday.
So don't make me pay you for time you didn't work.
Beyond jobs, Father Boyle has set up an alternative high school staffed by Jesuits and lay teachers for gang member dropouts.
Down. A map often shows north up.
So you were thrown out of school, and who got you to go back to school?
Well, Father Greg. I was getting kicked out of schools, and nobody wanted me, you know, so there's the only place I could come.
And do you like being here in school?
Yeah.
Because?
I'm learning something.
The most important of Father Boyle's many accomplishments is making these kids believe in themselves.
He's trying to tell us that there's another person inside of us, that, you know, we're not all just gangbangers. That we could become, you know, citizens, regular citizens.
Would you like that?
That'll be all right.
That would be all right?
Yeah.
The reason I got out of the gang was simply I was taught to think what I was doing was good. In actuality, it was evil.
What made Kelly eventually see gang life as evil was religion.
I was able to come out of that through the grace of, you know, my higher power or the God of my understanding. So I have to see hope.
In fact, hope for the future is what convinced many young people to leave street gangs. But in many neighborhoods, hope was in short supply.
So long as we have marginalized ethnic groups, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, whatever they may be, the gang problem will probably grow. And so long as that community remains the way it is or gets worse, gets less organized, then the gang problem is going to be there and it's going to grow because we're doing nothing to prevent that.
Man, we don't want to be out here hanging, banging, and slanging. There's more to us than news, weather, and sports. We have, like, again, man, we're human beings that want to go to college, that want to own businesses, that want to work in corporate America.
What I want more than anything is for people to know what I know about these kids. And that they are human beings, and that they've got a great capacity to love and kid and
and just be human beings. And if people knew that, they'd do it. They'd give them a chance.
Me, I'm a living example that you can come out of it. You can overcome it. You can make it.
What was so discouraging about gang life at the end of the 20th century was that for every Temba Hassan Kelly who found his way out of a gang through religion, there were fresh recruits ready to take his place. Some final thoughts when we come back. The explosion of gangs in the last 2 decades of the 20th century grew out of a much larger problem, the rise of a social underclass and America's failure to provide hope to children born into a world of disintegrating family life and grinding poverty. Although there were small successes with programs designed to create a future for some of those children, no one came up with a large-scale program that dealt effectively with the forces of despair and alienation that prompted so many young Americans to look for their identity and their self-esteem in the world of street gangs. I'm Mike Wallace, and this is the 20th Century.